Welcome, everyone, to this explainer. Today, we're diving right into one of the absolute most iconic and recognizable fish in the entire marine hobby, the blue tang. If you've ever found yourself just completely mesmerized by a saltwater aquarium, there's a really good chance you were drawn in by their vivid electric colors and that incredibly confident way they swim around. But here's the kicker. Their actual care needs are so frequently oversimplified online. We hear hobbyists constantly asking, hey, is my tank big enough? But the answer is way more complex than just a raw water volume number. So today, we're going to break down the fundamental needs of the blue tang, going way beyond the basic gallon count to figure out if your setup is truly ready for one of these incredible animals.
All right, here's our roadmap for today. We are going to look at 1. The 125-gallon baseline. 2. Why footprint matters most. 3. The invisible water requirements. 4. Tankmates and territorial behavior. 5. Diet and natural grazing. And finally, 6. Maximizing your usable space.
Let's jump right into Section 1, the 125-gallon baseline, which is a recognized standard in the hobby.
So, 125 gallons. That is the magic number. Almost anywhere you look, seasoned aquarists universally point to this exact figure as the absolute bare minimum size for keeping adult blue tangs. But why 125? Well, honestly, it's a lot less about luxury and much more about basic biology and behavior. These guys are intensely active swimmers. They literally need enough room to roam around, establish their own territory, and most importantly, avoid the constant underlying stress that comes from feeling boxed in.
Now, there is a massive trap that a lot of newer aquarists fall into, and it's this. 125 gallons is the baseline. It is absolutely not the finish line. Sure, a smaller tank might easily keep a tiny juvenile blue tang alive for a little while, but as that fish grows, a cramped environment is going to aggressively accelerate problems. We are talking about heightened aggression, significantly reduced natural foraging habits, and a vastly higher susceptibility to illness simply because their core activity needs just aren't being met. Moving on to Section 2, why footprint matters most and how physical dimensions completely change the game. Think about it like this. Horizontal swimming space is infinitely more critical than vertical height for these fish. If you take two completely different 125-gallon tanks, say one that's really tall and narrow and another that's long and wide, they are going to feel like two completely different worlds to your tank. A wider, longer setup offers continuous routes for the fish to swim and graze on algae without repeatedly hitting a glass wall. And maybe even more importantly, a long tank means they aren't just constantly bumping into their tank mates, which drastically cuts down on social stress.
Next up, Section 3, the invisible water requirements for setting a safe stage.
It is absolutely crucial to remember that blue tangs respond incredibly poorly to invisible threats. Even a tiny swing in salinity, sudden temperature spikes or drops, or a steady buildup of nutrients can severely stress them out and compromise their immune systems. That means having rock-solid biological filtration, doing consistent water testing, and maintaining highly efficient waste removal. These aren't just good ideas, they are absolute non-negotiable necessities to buffer your tank against deadly spikes.
And a huge piece of this water quality puzzle is movement. You absolutely must avoid dead spots. When your water flow is uneven, tanks are basically forced to huddle in very specific areas where the current and food are predictable, which crowds them together and spikes their stress levels. Plus, having moderate, well-distributed flow prevents those nasty dead spots where detritus gathers. Proper flow actually supports healthy skin and gill function by vastly improving the gas exchange in your water. It's a real game changer.
All right, let's hit Section 4, tankmates and territorial behavior, where space truly dictates social harmony.
A lot of folks just assume, hey, blue tangs school in the ocean, so they must be completely peaceful, right? Well, actually, while they are social in their own unique way, they can be highly territorial, especially toward other fish with a similar body shape. In small, cramped systems, there's nowhere to hide and absolutely no escape routes. When that happens, a totally normal social interaction can turn into sustained chasing, nipping, or relentless bullying in the blink of an eye.
Thankfully, managing this aggression is entirely doable if you follow a few steps. First, you dilute the visual pressure by simply having a larger, longer tank. Out of sight, out of mind is a very real concept for fish. Second, providing abundant space means your fish have multiple choices for where to chill out and where to eat, so they aren't fighting over a single algae clip. And third, introducing a tang to an already established tank requires careful planning. Sometimes you have to use acclimation boxes or even rearrange your rockwork to disrupt old territories.
Section 5, Diet and Natural Grazing. Let's look at how physical space actually dictates eating habits.
So it's a super common misconception that blue tangs are strict herbivores. Actually, scratch that. They aren't purely herbivores, but they absolutely do require a heavily plant-forward diet to support proper digestion. A thriving tang usually needs a mix of about 50% high-quality marine algae-based foods, 30% nori seaweed supplementation, and 20% herbivore pellets to make sure they get all their essential vitamins.
This is where larger tanks have a massive advantage because all that vast rockwork naturally supports continuous all-day grazing habits. Smaller tanks, they just can't sustain that naturally. They force you to manually feed much more often to mimic that grazing routine, and the huge risk there is that constant manual feeding easily leads to overfeeding, which directly causes those dangerous nutrient spikes we talked about earlier. Bringing it all together with Section 6, maximizing your usable space, the ultimate metric for long-term health.
If you really want stable, long-term health for a blue tang rather than just keeping it alive for a while, you've got to run a quick audit of your setup. Step 1. Carefully evaluate your horizontal swimming area. Is it actually long and open? Step 2. Critically observe your current tankmates and honestly ask yourself how aggressive interactions might play out in the space you have. And Step 3. Make absolutely sure your biological filtration and your own maintenance routine can reliably support this fish without the water quality swaying.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought to chew on as you look at your own setup. Does your tank provide true, usable space, or is it basically just technical housing? Because a tank with real, open room to continuously swim, natural areas to graze, and a stable, stress-free environment is going to vibrantly thrive, rather than just survive in a glass box. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I hope this deeper look helps you create the absolute best environment for your tank.